en un lugar de La Mancha, de cuyo nombre no quiero acordarme.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good
Aujourd'hui,
fortune
maman est
must-
morte. Ou peut-être hier, je ne sais pas.
As audiobook demand grows worldwide, producers and publishers face pressure to deliver high-quality titles faster, more efficiently, and at greater scale. Welcome to The Spoken World. I'm Christopher Kenneally. The Spoken World is sponsored by Penguin Random House Audio, the team behind some of the most talked-about audiobooks in the industry. Adam Fritz, CEO of Pozotron, and Robin Lai with John Marshall Media recently told me why they believe the future of audiobook production will require an alignment of AI tools and human expertise. Adam Fritz likens Pozotron's own technology to spell check for voice. Pozotron's AI systems compare narration against manuscript text to detect missed words, mispronunciations, pacing problems, and other issues before release. With publishers facing intense financial pressure in audiobook production, especially for titles that aren't bestsellers, AI-assisted workflows like these will help to hold down costs and reduce turnaround times, says Robin Lai. Fritz and Lai agree that when producers move to automate many pre-production tasks, they free up time for creative human work, including casting, directing, and storytelling. Adam Fritz, Chief Executive Officer of Pozotron in Vancouver, welcome to The Spoken World.
Thank you very much, Chris. Great to be here.
Looking forward to our discussion. We want to talk about Pozotron and its role in improving audiobook production. Now, you've got a substantial role in audiobook production for both major trade book publishers as well as media giants like Disney and the New York Times. So tell us, Adam, what factors have driven such high adoption with major publishers and studios?
Firstly, we've built a good product that works really well. That's for sure the most important part. We were founded in 2017, so we've almost got 10 years of development behind us, where the core technology hasn't changed a lot in 10 years because it was built so well, but we've been able to iterate and build on around these edge cases over the years. So the one thing I learned coming into this industry back in 2021 is that no two audiobooks are produced alike. No two audiobook companies produce content the same way, and no two audiobooks within the same company are even produced the same way. So there's a ton of different workflows. And so we've spent a lot of time both refining our technology, but also meeting with customers of all different shapes and sizes, from a narrator narrating their very first book all the way up to the big five publishers, understanding their workflow, understanding their use case, and then tweaking and customizing our tools to make sure it is what we like to call a Swiss Army knife. It can do everything in an audio production our customers need it to do, regardless of the people involved, regardless of the content involved. It can do everything you need it to do in a customizable, easy-to-use way.
And you've described Pozotron as a spell check for voice. So what does that mean? Are AI tools changing standards and expectations for audiobook quality control?
So at its core, our proofing technology, which is the main core of our software suite, is designed to point out all the potential mistakes a narrator makes in their narration. So it catches missed words, added words, mispronunciations, pauses, and noises. Just like you said, it's spell check for your voice. Just like when you type something in Microsoft Word, it shows you the little red underline as a potential mistake. Our tool does the same thing for any discrepancy between what we predict as the perfect read of a script compared to the actual narration that you've uploaded. But just like spell check doesn't correct it for you unless you right click on it and click accept, or it gives you the ignore option, our tool does the same thing. So it shines a light on the potential mistake and has our user decide whether it needs to be fixed or not. Now, in relation to changing the standards and expectations for audiobook quality control, I can't argue that it hasn't. Pozotron is used on almost 40,000 audiobooks, English language audiobooks, out of the about 75,000 English language audiobooks produced annually. So it has a massive impact on the industry. I can't argue that it hasn't changed standards, but I would argue that that's maybe not a bad thing.
Adam Fritz with Pozotron, what's important, I think, to emphasize is with spell check for voice, as you say, the machine highlights something but doesn't make the correction. So my question to you, and I think something on the minds of many people in audiobook industry, is why is this human oversight so important?
I believe that AI is very good at black or white things. It is not perfect at this point, at shades of gray. So audiobooks or any human art form is by definition human, and it requires human input, regardless of how much AI is involved. If it's a piece of graphic or visual art, if it's a sports team logo, whatever the piece of human content is, it requires human input. In our case, we believe that in the case of an audiobook, for example, if an author is reading their own audiobook, it's a book that they've written and they change some of the words, that's their prerogative. If it doesn't change the meaning of the story or the meaning of the paragraph about World War II history or whatever, that's up to the author, the rights holder, whoever. In some cases, you actually have to change the printed book content to fit an audiobook. So for example, a lot of nonfiction books will have a line saying, in the book you are holding, you will learn today that blah, blah, blah. Our customers need to change that to say, in the audiobook you are listening to. Our tool, if it automatically fixed things, would note that as a discrepancy between the script and the audio. And if it fixed it automatically, it would fix that when that is not the right creative decision for the audio content. To give you an example, AI narration is advancing and will continue to advance and get better. Our customers who I know have either tested or actually in production use some AI narration. They find in many cases those productions require more human oversight in post-production, specifically because the errors in those books are so much less human and so much more jarring to the human who is listening to them. So while if, for example, in a human voiced audiobook, a cough or clearing your throat or a slight mispronunciation gets through, the mistakes that may get through if it's not post-produced, proofing, QC, editing, whatever, by a human are so much more jarring to the human listener because they are not human mistakes.
And the intersection in that audio production workflow of the human and the AI is a very interesting subject, I think, Adam Fritz. How do narrators and editors interact with your AI tools during production?
It's a great question. I believe all work is going to go into 3 different categories. There is going to be human-only jobs, which are going to be a continuously shrinking segment. There are going to be AI-only jobs, which I actually would argue there probably should be very few of those. And then there's going to be what are called cyborg jobs or cyborg tasks. And that is where a human and an AI tool or any form of software, whether it uses AI or not, work together to get the best possible output. And I believe very strongly that those cyborg tasks are where the biggest opportunities lie for any business, whether you're an audiobook proofing or a car manufacturer. So what we look at AI as doing is augmenting and improving human performance. So our company mission statement is essentially we build tools and technology to make humans more accurate, efficient, and profitable in their audiobook productions, and allowing them to focus on the creative elements of a story and not whether a word is mispronounced or the exact word perfect narration, for example, if that is the requirement for the script.
So what we're talking about here, Adam Fritz, is Pozotron reduces the bottlenecks in audiobook production. Can you tell us more about any specific areas that have been most successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I've referred to some of our pre-production things and our proofing. The 2 things I would say that most fit in terms of our tools to user use cases. So the first one would be editing. So once you do your proofing, sometimes it's the same person, sometimes it's a completely different person. They need to go find those mistakes in your actual audio file, usually using Pro Tools, Audition, Reaper, whatever DAW, digital audio workstation you're using. They have to go manually find those timestamps. So at 2:12, Chris said this, he should have said that. what you can do from Pozotron is directly export marker files to any of 13 or 14 different DAWs that we support, which will automatically mark where every edit needs to be made. Massive time saver. And also from a communication and collaboration perspective, usually a company will have one person doing the proofing, one person doing the editing, and sometimes it may be a person doing the rough edit and a different person doing the mastering edit. So all of these tools enable collaboration and communication much easier. Another example, every time I've talked to of the thousands of conversations I've had over the last 5 years with people in our industry, almost everyone can remember a single time, at least one time, where a character's name is mispronounced. So in some cases, it could be 3 times in a book. In some cases, it could be 350 times. We have a tool called Scan Occurrences, where if you want to listen to every pronunciation of the word positron, for example, in the nonfiction story of Pozotron in 20 years when, we become a unicorn, you could enter this into this tool, click scan, and it will play every single mention of the name Pozotron back to back to back. Previously, what would happen before this tool existed and before Pozotron existed is you would have to go have your script open, do Control F in your PDF, find every mention of the word Pozotron, then go into your DAW or other audio player, find those and mark them. What our tool does, you listen to them all back to back. You can then either mark them in proofing with one click of a button as a mistake or export directly into Pro Tools and fix it. So in this case, can actually save you days of work, depending on how large the number of mistakes is. So just in terms of bottlenecks, that is one specific example of a massive time saver that can delay time to distribution by minutes, hours, or even days.
And at Pozotron, Adam Fritz, you've got the perspective of nearly a decade on all of this. And considering the dynamic state of AI in audio production right now in 2026, what do you foresee will be the most significant process transformations we'll see in the next 18 to 24 months?
So that's a great question. I'm going to answer it first, non-Pozotron related, and then Pozotron related. So I think the biggest thing is, regardless of who the vendor is, these AI voice replicas are going to continue getting better and better and better. They are going to continue to take more and more of the big picture scripted audio production market. But that's going to be governed by 2 specific things. One, listeners' willingness to pay for that content compared to human content. I think money talks, and that's going to be governed by how much users actually download and listen to that audio, and 2, how distributors price that, if that is actually differently priced than human voiced audio content, for example. And then 2, there's still a lot up in the air legally around copywriting and trademarking AI generated content. So I think those are the 2 things that are going to govern that. Regardless of those, AI voice is going to take a larger and larger segment of the audio market. And then the second one, I think, is premium audio content types. For example, the Audible Harry Potter multicast series, which is unbelievably high quality, and my kids are listening to it basically on repeat. Those type of premium content formats are going to continue to become more and more common, specifically because they are incredibly difficult to produce from a time perspective and a complexity perspective, but the quality is just incredible. They have hundreds of actors, full audio and sound production. It's really incredible. And I think that's what users are going to really gravitate towards, likely for more premium or popular IP as well. And then in terms of Pozotron, what we're really working on, number one, collaboration and communication tools. So even just automating notifications between users. So when a narrator uploads their audio, it automatically prompts the proofer, chapters 1, 2, and 3 are ready. And then when the proofing is done, immediately prompts the editor to do their editing and download their DAW markers. And then finally, we're working on a tool that will do an automated rough edit. So you mark your pickups, record your pickups, press a button, it'll swap the 2 out, export it into your DAW with markers showing where all those edits are made. So I'll be honest, this tool will never be as good as a high quality professional human editor, but for a narrator narrating a book through ACX, where they're going directly to between the author. In many cases, that narrator is doing pre-production, narration, post-proofing, and editing themselves. They're not a professional editor. This tool will make it much easier, much faster, and much cheaper, if you believe in the ethos of time is money, to get that high quality production done quickly.
Adam Fritz, Chief Executive Officer of Pozotron, thanks so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me. This was excellent.
The Spoken World returns with Robin Lai of John Marshall Media in a moment. The Spoken World is sponsored by Penguin Random House Audio, the team behind some of the most talked about audiobooks in the industry. From standout fiction to culture-shaping nonfiction, they collaborate with top authors and world-class narrators to create audio that connects deeply with listeners and brings powerful stories to life. To meet the award-winning team and learn how to partner with them, visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com. Robin Lai, Senior Vice President at John Marshall Media in New York City. Welcome to the Spoken World.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm looking forward to talking with you about your experience working with Pozotron and what you've learned about how quality control really plays a more important role than ever in long-form audio projects. So tell us about working with Pozotron. What are the attractions there, and how does it reduce the kinds of errors that are really a part of audiobook production?
So Pozotron is, one of those tools where you don't realize you need it until you start using it. And I think the best way to describe it is as a productivity tool. Yes, it is AI, but it is using AI in the best possible sense of the word in helping reduce things like human error. So, just as a brief explanation, the way Pozotron works is it takes the audio and it compares it with the PDF of the text. It flags anything that it sees as an error, a misread, or pronunciation issue. And then the editor goes in and checks those flags and makes a decision. The key part is that Pozotron on its own cannot make any decisions. It requires human input, which is the way it should be. I'm sure you've probably read about Claude deleting an entire database of recently in the news with, no human authorization. That's sort of an extreme case, but, with Pozotron, there's no fear of that because everything is fully controlled by the editor. So where it really works for us is in quality control. So what happens in the audiobook production process is the book is recorded, it's edited, and then it's sent to QC. In the past, what that meant was somebody, a human, would have to listen to the entire book, range from anywhere from 2 hours to 40 hours. And you would be listening real time and you'd be comparing the audio against the text. Needless to say, that's very time consuming, quite expensive, and there's only so much a human can really focus before your mind starts to wander. Invariably, you're going to make a mistake and you're going to not catch something. AI tools like Pozotron take that completely out of the equation. In fact, it actually over-analyzes and will flag stuff that, sometimes we're just like, no, this is absolutely fine. This is just either regionalism or something. But yes, it has reduced the error rate down to pretty much zero. So like I said, the editor will then go in, check each individual prompt, and make a decision on whether A, it should be re-recorded, B, it's okay as is, or C, we need to look into it a little more and check. And it's been a huge game changer because when you're doing post-production, the bottleneck is going to be stuff like QC, where you physically have to devote a large amount of time to listen to things. So imagine you're doing 5 audiobooks and each of them is 40 hours long. At a 2-to-1 ratio, that's a lot of hours. Contrast that with being able to use Pozotron to just analyze it and come back and go through those flags. I mean, you've solved one of the major bottlenecks in production. So that allows the editors to handle a larger workload and be more productive with their time.
And with the tools like Pozotron, it's not just making the team's life easier. It's about making these kinds of audiobook productions viable in the marketplace. So tell me about how AI tools are going to ensure that audio production really does remain viable at scale.
The funny thing is that using AI tools has actually slightly increased the time almost, because in the past, if humans miss something and nobody caught it, it would go out into market and, a word switch here and there. But with tools like Pozotron, everything is caught. So now we're looking at a lot more pickups in general and a lot of pickup inserts that need to happen. So it saved time in one aspect of it, but it sort of increased slightly in a different part of it. But net total, we are still saving a lot of time. So where that helps at scale is, you're able to do more and have a quicker turnaround time, which these days with audiobook budgets, publishers are also constrained by, their P&L. When they look at a book, it's not a bestseller like Harry Potter or something. They have to answer to their finance team about, well, you're spending this and, we're not really recouping. So we understand the issues that publishers face also in allocating resources to create audiobooks. So AI tools help us keep costs low at scale, which then results in more audiobooks being able to be produced with human narrators. Because on the creative side, that is where I think we really want humans to be on. On the post-production side, things that are tedious, things that, are sort of mind-numbing, that's where AI really shines as a productivity tool to help people work smarter in that sense. And we're very careful about, our usage in that we want this to be a tool. We're not looking at these tools as replacements.
And you travel widely for your work, Robin Lai, and you spoke recently at the Bologna Book Fair. And I wonder if you could share with us the differences you see in how audio and publishing communities around the world view these AI technologies.
So for AI in general, the view of AI, it's very interesting when you compare it to how the East and the West views AI. The East embraces it. It is viewed as a productivity tool. It is viewed as something that helps people do more work to their detriment. Whereas in the West, it's viewed as a replacement for humans a lot of the times. I know there are a lot of very ethical companies out there who have very strong guidelines, and I think publishing is one of them, where, people still respect the creative arts. But I think the fear is very warranted when you see things in the news about, larger companies saying, hey, we're moving solely into AI and we're cutting a bunch of jobs. It is a very real fear. To me, that is slightly short-sighted because ultimately you do need humans. How many of us have had experiences with AI chatbots trying to solve an issue that is not quite standard and just getting really frustrated and just, screaming, give me a human. So yeah, things like that, there's still limitations, and we're seeing those limitations in AI, especially on the creative side. So I think that, to reiterate a point I made in Bologna, AI usage is here to stay. I think that's undeniable. In fact, if you look at the past 10, 15 years, we've been using some form of AI. Spell check is a form of AI in Word. So used in its proper context and used with transparency on what you're trying to use it for, I think takes away a lot of the unknown and the fear about AI, right? Of course, people are going to abuse it. You see that with people making, AI written books that frankly just read like crap.
So with AI really getting all the attention it does in the creative industries, the emphasis at the beginning is around efficiency and the benefits of efficiency. And the question I think that people are asking, you're asking, is whether this efficiency opens up creative possibilities, which is something that really you would love to see happen. How do you see that right now? And is that promise being realized, or is it overrated?
I think it absolutely is being realized, and especially, again, using Pozotron as our case study, since that's what we use. So, for example, we've been talking about post-production and where AI really helps. So let's shift and go into the pre-production part. Let's say my producer is given a book and they need to produce it. Generally, what happens is they will read the book. They will then make decisions on casting, on sort of, is this a single narrator, multi-read, do lookups for word pronunciations, and, just a lot of nitty-gritty work that falls under the category of mind-numbing and really just time-intensive. AI tools like Pozotron allow us to take a bunch of those things out of the equation, such as lookups. You feed it the script, it flags any nouns, place names, foreign words, and it just gives you a good starting point to work with. The benefit of that is that as a producer, when you're reading through the story, you can focus on the story. You can focus on being creative, on, making casting decisions, on, figuring out, okay, who do I want to direct this? Am I directing this? If so, then how am I shaping the overall performance of the narrator? As opposed to, okay, I'm in the scene. Oh, great. I got to figure out, how do you say this in Czech? 15 minutes later, you've completely lost the creative flow of where you were going. And it's sort of a very interrupted left brain, right brain situation where neither really gets the attention it needs, and you just end up with a little bit of a convoluted mess. So taking that sort of tedium out of it, and obviously, again, it's a tool. You need to check. You cannot rely on it 100%. You need to do your due diligence. Still saves you time in the long run. It still gives you back a lot of time to be creative, to maybe take on a little more work. Maybe now you're producing 3 books instead of 1, and you're able to focus. So that is where it really excels.
Robin Lai, Senior Vice President at John Marshall Media in New York City, thanks so much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure speaking with you, Chris. Thank you.
That's all for now. Our producer is Jeremy Brisky of Burst Marketing. Rob Simon is our executive producer. With support from Penguin Random House Audio, the Spoken World podcast covers the latest news in audiobook publishing and features exclusive interviews with audiobook industry leaders, analysts, and innovators. Learn more at spokenworld.media and subscribe on all major podcasting and streaming platforms. I'm Christopher Kenneally. Join me again soon on The Spoken World.